Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Chris Cochran. And he's a speaker, he's an author, he's a CEO, he's an entrepreneur at heart. He's written most recent book about um, finding what's good about positivity, lessons in adversity. He's got a really fascinating story. I'm really happy to have him on the show. He's got over 15,000 followers on Instagram, and really happy and excited about this discussion. So, Chris, welcome.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Luke. Chris, it's a pleasure to be here, and I am looking forward to having this nice fireside chat with you.
Yeah, so I know we had talked a little bit backstage, and you have a really inspiring story. So, start off by talking about it and what led you to write the book and how the audience can benefit from your expertise today.
Yeah, thank you. And so, I think when you look at my life on a professional perspective, like a lot of people, I went to school, went to college, married my high school sweetheart, still married to her today. Started dating when we were 15, and we're together today. We dated all through college. I graduated from the University of Tennessee, and started off on my career. My career was started. I always preface this because my kids will always like, "Oh, what did you do, Dad? What did you do before?" Because I run companies and I sit on the board of a public company, and I'm like, "Well, I actually sold yellow pages door to door." And that's what I did back in the day, back in the early '90s. I was going door to door, being a salesman, selling yellow page ads. So I had everybody has to start somewhere. So that's where my career started. I really learned a lot to interact with people. I learned to have conversations that led me to the next stage of my life, and ultimately I was driven to work in technology. And so I've worked with some of the largest technology companies, HP, EDS, and eventually landed most of my career with a technology company that was called iGate. I think now they're Capgemini. But I spent a lot of my career there, and then decided to open up my own IT consulting company back in 2008. And that was due to the fact that, like all of us, it just didn't work out for me. I was actually fired. And so, that's a life-changing situation at that time when you go through something like that. I have 3 kids. I have a house. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. What am I going to do? So, you just go for it. You get past the fear as an entrepreneur, and you just go for things, and God willing, things kind of worked out for me. So I've built the business. It's successful. It's called Blue Chip Solutions. And so I also sit on the board for a biotech company called Coeptus Therapeutics, which we do advanced cancer research. It's very advanced technologies. It's a public company, and I sit on the board for that. I think that's where I get a lot of my drive, obviously based on my personal story. And I also manage the Christian Cochran Legacy Fund, which is in honor of my son who passed away of cancer 3 years ago. And that's really what led me on this journey to write this book. It's not an easy thing to go through. I like to write. It's probably one of the few things I'm pretty decent at. And, over a year and a half ago, I sat down, went back through all my journals, the journey that I took with my son, the days, that year that he lived. I wrote a lot in a journal, and I had to go back, capture all those things. And so that's where the book was inspired by. The title is What's Good About Today, A Purpose-Driven Life. And I'm always seeking that purpose-driven life. I feel like the book is a roadmap for others to help them, guide them in a purposely driven life. But the words "what's good about today," it comes from my son, who used to say to my wife and I, when he got this diagnosis on August 26th, 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, when parents came to him and said, "We were so sorry that this happened to you," Christian said, "It's okay. I wouldn't want this burden on anyone. This is my burden. I take it." And he never complained one time from the moment he was diagnosed to the moment he took his last breath with us around him. And he used to remind us every day when we were sad and we were upset, he would say, "What's good about today?" Right? And you think about that, it stopped me, and it made all of us stop, and he would tell everyone what's good about today, because it was a daily reminder of all that is good in our day. You just got to look at it. And even in the difficult times and the things that are bad, you can find goodness in any single day. And so my job is to go out there and to, if you want to call it preach it, is to help people recognize the good in each and every single day. And I think the book is a testament. I'm simply a guy telling the story of what I've witnessed with my son.
Very very heartfelt story, and a lot of the listeners, I'm sure they resonate with that. And it's interesting. I do this experiment every morning. I get out of bed, and normally I'm in Houston, which is not a really a great city, but I think when I get out of the city, and then I wake up and step out of bed, and I remind myself, you don't have anything to complain about. So it's so I love to dive into the conversation. And so we talked about your motivation and then your son. So one thing one thing that people talk about a lot is resiliency, and you talk about finding positivity in adversity. So how can people apply this mindset to find positivity in their own lives? Because people are going through all different challenges, and a lot of the things that we think are problems are not actually real problem. People are starving, or they don't have shelter, or how do we apply this mindset?
It's a great question. It's tough, right? The universal thing that we all have in our life is grief, right? Those who lose loved ones, parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, those that we are close to. Losing a child is obviously every grief is difficult, but I always say, losing a child, it sticks to you like glue. It's not, it never washes away. I've lost my parents, and you can kind of get over that, but over time, but a child just sticks to you. But the thing that I would tell those who listen, and one of the things that my son Christian taught me, and I talk about this, is so many of us have to-do list, right? We have these to-do lists. What do I got to do today? I got to write it down. I got to-dos, to-dos, to-dos. My son had a to-love list, and it was extraordinary, because it was really, if you change that mindset of, this to love list, you find out that you're approaching the world a lot differently. And you also, when you go through these difficult times, as your listeners do, and all of us do, is you have to also realize that you're not in control, right? What we are in control of is what we have right now, with me and you together here talking. That's what I have right now. I don't know when we get off this, and life is changes for everybody very quickly, changes on a dime. And I say that because Chris, my life was perfect. I mean, when I say perfect, it still is. I love, my family. We're close. We're a tight knit family. But when I say perfect, business was roaring. My kids were, Christian just graduated college. He was ready to take on the world. He's coming out actually to the West Coast. He was an actor, and he's full of talent, full of life. I have two other children that are younger. Life was moving perfectly, and bam, it just hits you, right? He's hit with a terminal cancer, and he's given a less than 1% chance of living at 22 years of age. And so what I tell you is life can change on a dime, but it is important that we strive for optimism. We remain humble, and we, even in the face of despair, we really have to approach things that way. So I think my message is, optimism and strength, and always remain present in the moment. And it sounds like you did that this morning, as you do. And I think rituals are great when you wake up in the morning. I have same rituals. I do the same type of things. I pray. I hope for a good day. I hope for the armor of God to give me the strength. And I think those are things that are important for us to do, and they help us through the day.
Yeah, I really, like I said, I think this, for the audience, this is really very inspiring and moving episode. Next question is, because you talked about a to love list, and so what's interesting is, we this is a business entrepreneurship podcast. A lot of it's like finances, but a lot of it, there's a bigger meaning. So talk about intentional living and living a life with purpose, intention, inspired by lessons from your book and actionable steps for to incorporate these principles into their lives.
Yeah. Well, I am an entrepreneur and I'm a businessman, and so I practice that in my daily routine, and then that gets down to how you treat your customers, right? I think anyone can relate. Hey, our customers are number one, and so in a business sense, I put my customers there. My employees obviously very important, and it's up there as well. And it's how you treat your customers, how you treat your employees. It makes for a much more bountiful existence, makes for a more bountiful business as well. I talk a lot about, it's not about the length of time, depth of our experiences. I try to, you know, highlight again how you stay in the present. And so again, I stay in the present when I'm with my customers. I stay in the present when I'm with my employees. I can tell you there's a pre-Chris Cochran, pre-cancer Chris Cochran, and there's a Chris Cochran after all this. I can't even recognize that guy when I think about him, right? Because I was the same guy. We all have that same term: keep up with the Joneses, keep up with whatever, right? He's got the better house, got bigger, whatever. And I can't recognize that because I realize that's out of my control. And I think it's out of everyone's control. And so I think you have to be mindful of moments, not to overlook the ones that give you, life's richest colors, you know? And so I emphasize that quite frequently when I talk to people and when I talk to my employees as well.
Yeah. Kind of going a little bit off script. How do you balance this need to do more, be more, have more, success versus the little things like keeping grounded and appreciating things, the power of gratitude.
Yeah. Well, it's not an easy thing, but I think that, when you go through something traumatic, and everybody has different tragedies in their life, right? There's all kinds of different things that affect people very differently, right? And you made a point, which is there's so many small things, and it's always a difficult thing for me to navigate because I meet people who tell me things that I go, huh, I wish I had your problems. Those are really good problems, but they are big to people. They're big to them. So I think navigating that daily is again, I focus on time. Time in its traditional sense is really a limited currency. So, but but really, it's the moments that we touch souls that really are infinite. And so that's how I navigate it. It's not an easy thing for everybody, but I think staying grounded and realizing, again, I said this before, is you're not in control. You don't have the control you think you do. And I think the guy before, I thought I had control. I could control everything. I thought I could control Christian sickness, right? I went to every doctor, every best facilities in the United States, the best doctors, but in the end, I can't control that. You can only do the best you can. So I think the same thing can be applied, as you're working through your life in any facet.
Yeah, I really, very powerful and strong. Next, kind of talking about is this idea of building a legacy and your what I know because we everybody talks about finding your why, but
Right.
I know certain things like traumatic things can really feel you to have that. For the people that kind of on the surface level, what do you have to say to them to find their why? Because sometimes it takes like a an accident or illness or getting laid off, or some huge loss to actually hone in. But some people, they go about their daily lives and they're kind of ho hum, don't really have a purpose. How do you address these and how do you kind of wake them up?
I always go to a quote, because I'm not the wisest guy in the world, that's for sure. So I go to other wise people to provide that information. Bruce Lee, and he had a quote. It's a fantastic quote, and it honestly carried me. He says, "Don't pray for an easy life, right?" He says, "Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." Right? Because that's true. Life is difficult, and life is not an easy task for any of us. But I think once you realize that, you've got these challenges in front of you, and, you can get there by, true optimism. And I think, getting into things that, help others, right? One of the things when you go through the process is you say, "Look, I'm creating jobs, I have employment for people, I work, I'm helping do these things." Through the Legacy Fund, Christian's, Legacy Fund, we provide, funding to help those who are less privileged, inner city kids who, after school programs. We do after school programs. Things actually, that was not inspired by me. That was my son prior to his passing told me, "Dad, I want you to create a foundation." I mean, this is the knowledge he had this whereabouts. Create a foundation that's going to help those who are less fortunate, help those who are struggling. He loved the arts. So, that's an area that we focus on. He loved animals. So I think one has to find a passion to give to others at the end of the day, because that's where you really find the meaning to life, right? It's not the money you bring in and keeping up with the Joneses and all those things. They're just material items. We all know this. This isn't anything I'm telling you. That's the secret of success. But it honestly, going through something that's very difficult really opens you up as a human being to see, like, huh, this is really, we're all here very short. It's not a long time. So focus on the things that bring joy to others. And I would tell you that's where you find your most joy and purpose.
Yeah. Again, very powerful. I know we have around 5 minutes remaining, and so I wanted to ask you because talking about writing, because a lot of the audience, they want to speak, they want to share their stories, they want to you know get on TEDx and all of these. So, kind of talk about the book that you wrote and why you chose a book, and how you plan to leverage it, either speaking and kind of the challenges that you faced while writing and how you overcame those.
Yeah, like I said, the book was a process. It took some, a lot of emotions. It still takes a lot of emotions out of me when I do go back to the book, of course, and I read through it. You know, I've been asked a couple things. What's this book about? Am I gonna be, is it gonna make me feel bad? Is it gonna be, all these things? And I tell you, I say, look, it's a teaching memoir, right? I don't know if anybody's heard that
Mhm.
phrase, but it's a teaching memoir. Um, but at the end of the day, it's a love story. And if you and it tells the story. When I was going through the book, this cathartic process of figuring out, oh my gosh, I have so many emotions, and do people really want to read this stuff? Do they want to pay attention to this? Will they get something out of it? Because I had to think how Christian would think. And Christian would want me to make sure it was a positive approach to any of this. And so I look at it like, when I was putting it together like a Disney movie has, there's always the character who goes through this really deep challenge and then kind of comes out on the other side. And so when I wrote the book, I wanted to follow a model of, telling a story that captured, the essence of my son Christian, but was a love story as a family that goes through difficult times, but finds resolute and positivity and puts their grief and challenges into helping those who need the help, but also practical measures in the book, right? At the end of every chapter is an opportunity to learn how to take this into the world. So whether it's living with acceptance, strive for optimism, remaining humble, even in the face of some of these things. So, and I think the other thing is strive for empathy. There's such lack of empathy in many things. So that's a big overreaching thing in the book.
Yeah, it's and kind of to conclude it, what are your future goals and both in terms of personal and professional projects, continuing Christian's legacy, and then how can people find you, find the book, and how can they reach you?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Well, they can certainly learn more about Christian at christiancochran.org. You can probably just Google Christian Cochran and you'll find all kinds of information. As it relates to myself, I say I take one day at a time, Chris. I'm not a big forward thinker anymore like I used to be. I can't change my past, and I can only do things today that will affect my future. So, but you can find information on chriscochranspeaks.com, and certainly follow on Instagram, which is Chris Cochran Speaks. And there's different areas. So I'm on the circuit of talking. I hope this leads to an opportunity to speak to more people, leads me to an opportunity to spread the message and inspire people to live what's good about today. And they can lead that purpose driven life.
Yeah, I love that. I really enjoyed this conversation, and like talking to you. It reminds me, you never know what people are going through, and you kind of pre, I guess your prejudgments. They're usually way off, and
So
what I
true.
love and empathy and just understanding, compassion, and I really enjoyed talking with you. For the audience, be sure to give Chris's socials a like and follow. Check out the his book, which will be in the links and show notes. Leave a 5-star review, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and the audience. Thank you again.